FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz. And, well, a lot to be thankful for the year being over. Certainly a lot of bad things happened, but a lot of good things too. But here to help us ring in the new year is our good friend Allyn Root, a fellow New Yorker, Westchesterite, who had the good sense to move out many years ago to greener, well, maybe not greener, but less taxed pastures. Wayne, how are you?
Hey, Kerry, and, forget about greener. I know you were thinking, well, Vegas isn't really green, but actually it's going to be whiter. As we make this recording of this interview, we're headed for New Year's Eve, and we're expecting a very big snowstorm in Las Vegas on New Year's Eve, maybe the biggest in the history of the city. So it doesn't snow very often, but I've lived here 13 years, and we had one major snowstorm in 13 years, and it produced 3 inches on the Strip. But at my home, which is on the mountains overlooking the entire Vegas Valley, we got over a foot when there were 3 inches on the Vegas Strip. I got a foot. This time they're talking about 3 inches on the Vegas Strip. So I may get a foot of snow. Last time it lasted a week on the ground, and I couldn't get out of my house for 2 days because I don't have snow tires and there are no snow plows in Vegas. So you're just kind of stuck. You either have an SUV or you can't get out. So I may be in for the new year for a couple of days.
Hey, well, climate change is working wonders, and you guys need the water. So if you get 3 inches, that'll be great, right?
Exactly.
So,
and if I get a foot at my house, that'll be a lot of fun for a couple of days. Then it gets old quick. But for a couple of days, the kids will be really happy.
Hey, and go pick up some sleds now, and they'll definitely. Hey, remember in the Northeast when you'd have snow days from school? That was one of the greatest things in the world. You didn't have to go to school; you just went out and played in the snow, and what could be better than that, right?
I always loved it, believe me. That's why to this day, we all know that as an adult, when you grow up, snow is not fun because now you got to drive around in it, and you can have an accident, and there's nowhere to park, and there's all kinds. But I never lost my love for snow, only because I always remembered as a kid that fun feeling of skipping school that day and not having a care in the world, having snowball fights and riding my sled down a big steep hill. So I never lost my love of snow to this day. I live in Vegas where basically never snows. That's about to change, I guess, on New Year's. But I spend a lot of time in Park City, Utah, and go skiing in the winter, and I just think snow is the most beautiful thing in the world. As long as you don't have to drive in it, it's the most beautiful thing in the world.
As long as you're not in New York City when it gets filthy after about 15 minutes and it gets so disgusting.
That too. I remember those days. I remember them well. That's why I don't live in New York anymore. There you go.
And as long as you're not in Atlanta where they don't know anything about snow, and they had that snowpocalypse last year where people spent 12 hours in their cars, couldn't get home, and people down south just don't understand snow.
Well, like I said, that's why snow is great as long as you don't have to drive in it. Two completely different things. If you could sit home for a couple of days and look at it and play in it, or go skiing in it, all of those things are great. Yeah. As long as someone else is driving you around in a perfectly equipped SUV with special tires that take care of snow, everything's great. But if you yourself have to drive in it, not quite so pleasant. So I get it, believe me.
Yeah, definitely not. And it's amazing, like the ski resorts, how prepared they are, how snow is just a normal part of life. But you go to a place like Atlanta, which is the deep South, the heart of the South, they don't know what they're doing. But it's kind of like the difference between liberals and conservatives. Liberals deal in reality and conservatives deal in Candyland, right?
Right. Well, liberals actually, and the average person right now who doesn't really have any political belief, they actually believe the economy is recovering and everything's great. They actually believe that, which is amazing because you and I both know the economy is not great and it's not recovering. We're living in a fantasy world. This is the most delusional fantasy world I've ever seen. But what bothers me is that, the media goes along with it, and even conservative media like Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, I think because they're corporate. And I wrote this in my new book, The Murder of the Middle Class. The corporations used to be on the the side of small business, and it was all businessmen, big and small, and businesswomen, big and small, against, the liberals and the communists and the progressives and the socialists, whatever word you want to use for them. It was the people who hated money on one side and the people who loved money on the other. But now you've got all these corporatists who run big corporations like Fox News. It's a big corporation. Rupert Murdoch's a billionaire. He doesn't care about me. He cares about making sure that his big corporation, News Corp, is taken care of and that their stock goes up. So he's thrilled that the Federal Reserve prints trillions in fake money and sprinkles it all over Wall Street. But the rest of us owe the debt back. So he doesn't even notice that there's a problem. Neither does the Wall Street Journal. They also love the fact that their big corporation is being helped by Barack Obama as he asked the Fed to print trillions of fake dollars. So now you've got all these giant media companies that qualify as big business and multinational corporations, and they're corporatists, and they're against us, Kerry.
Yeah. They're
not on our side. And so they report the news falsely to help themselves. So they go along with this distortion. The reality is GDP wasn't up 5%. I can prove to you that it was healthcare spending from the first quarter that was taken out by the federal government and the economists that work for the government and re-injected into the third quarter to make it look like it was up 5%. They were waiting for the right moment to show that the economy was flying, so they re-injected healthcare spending costs. By the way, even if it was from the third quarter, which it wasn't, but if it wasn't fraud, if it wasn't fake, if it wasn't misrepresented, all of which I consider a crime, but if I was wrong and this healthcare increase, which is most of this 5% GDP increase, was from healthcare spending, if it really was from the third quarter, how does that help me? All that means is millions and millions of people are forced to spend much more on healthcare, and they're calling that a bump in the economy. No, it's not. It's a bump for the people that own the health insurance companies, but it's a negative for all the consumers that have their prices doubled and tripled.
And by the way, what you're referring to was predicted by Zero Hedge, by our friend, whatever his name is. He doesn't go by his
real
name.
They remain anonymous. Yeah. I don't know if anybody knows his name, but he predicted they would take it out of. He proved they had taken it out of the first quarter, and he wasn't sure when they were going to inject it back. He assumed the second quarter. They didn't, and then it suddenly materialized out of the blue in the third quarter. How you can legally do that and how the Wall Street Journal or Forbes don't report on it, I have no idea, but you can't say third quarter GDP is up if it's all stuff that you injected from the first quarter. That's fraud.
Pure fraud. And that's what government numbers are about. They're pure fraud, Wayne. They're propaganda. And unfortunately, they have been for many, many years throughout both Republican and Democrat administrations, whether it's inflation, whether it's unemployment, whether it's GDP. They're just out there to further political agendas, nothing else, not really to help the public, and to justify ever more growing big government, intrusive government, and to further erode your rights. That's their purpose.
Right. Well, listen, the numbers that there's a triumvirate. Let's call it the triad. There's three numbers that government presents that are all fraud. Number one would be inflation. They say there's no inflation, and you and I both know at the store there's massive inflation, and at the electricity bill that we see each month for a home, massive inflation, and up to literally the last month at the pump there was massive inflation under the Obama administration, meaning the gas you pump in your car. Suddenly that went down, and there's a massive collapse in oil prices. But for most of his 6 years of the presidency, it was double from what it was under George Bush. So now you add in health insurance and taxes, all of which are dramatically up, and you've got massive inflation, but none of those are included in the inflation index. So that's fraud number one. Fraud number two is unemployment. We all know there are no jobs being created, and the few that are being created are part-time, low-wage jobs. And number three is GDP, where much of it is based on guesswork, just like the unemployment numbers. Economists at the Labor Department just guesstimate and also make phone calls for the household number, and it isn't necessarily accurate at all. It's just a guesstimate based on a bunch of phone calls. And at one point in 2012, it's now admitted that they never made the phone calls and they just made it up.
Oh, yeah.
So, they're all fake numbers, folks.
Yep, we know that. It's a big illusion, and they're trying to say, okay, it's all right to spend because the economy is getting better and everything is fine, but we know otherwise. So question here is, what do you do here? And, buy gold, just get ready for 2015 because it's going to be a doozy. But there were some winners in in 2015. If you were a government employee in California, you did great in many states, right?
Yeah, well, I wrote the op-ed celebrating Obama on New Year's for Blaze, for Glenn Beck's website, and I wrote about some of the people that should, in fact, be celebrating. And the first one was anybody who loves guns, actually. I'll get to gold in a second. But my first one was, any gun dealer, any gun manufacturer, because Obama's the greatest gun salesman in history. There's never been anybody who's better at selling guns. He just opens his mouth, reads from the teleprompter, and people rush out by the millions to buy more guns. So number one is gun dealers. They got to be celebrating Barack Obama on New Year's. Number two is what you mentioned, Kerry, gold. I mean, gold dealers should be celebrating. A lot of people think the price of gold is down and gold's in a slump, gold and silver. But that's really not technically true. I've got the numbers, and I put them in my new book, Murder the Middle Class, that prove that even though gold's price is down, the physical demand for gold is way up, and it's never been higher. Matter of fact, the government can even prove it. They've sold out of silver coins for the second year in a row. They sold out completely of all their silver coin allotment. So, they can't print it fast enough. And I also proved that central bankers around the world, while they poo-poo gold and say it's, like Warren Buffett and the richest people love to say gold is worthless. It's just a bar that sits there, never invest in gold. Meanwhile, central bankers around the world bought more gold in one recent year, 2012, than in 50 years combined since the year 1964. So if you're a gun dealer or a gold dealer, you should celebrate, because Obama is the greatest salesman that ever lived for guns and gold. He's also a great salesman for God, by the way. The worse things get, the more people pray to God. And I think Christians should thank God for Obama, too. He's also the greatest thing that ever happened to print shop owners, because they can't keep up with the demand for going out of business signs. Or homes for sale by bank signs, by the way. Or what do we want? Dead cops. Those signs are in big demand by liberal protesters.
Well, it's all funded by the Communist Party of the U.S. Communist Party, all those signs,
Actually, a combination, by the way. Yeah. A combination, by the way, of the Communist Party and the SEIU. I know I repeat myself.
What's the difference? Yeah. Gotcha.
So print shop owners are doing fine. I also pointed out that English as a second language teacher should thank God for Obama, because without him, I don't know, how many of them would be employed, but now the future is rosy and bright for them. Now there's going to be millions more illegal immigrants who don't speak one word of English. So if you teach English as a second language, you have the most in-demand job in America for the future. Thank Barack Obama. Some other people, yes, government bureaucrats should thank Obama. You mentioned that. 20% of all Americans are on food stamps, or I should say just slightly below. I think it's 19.4% of all Americans are on food stamps alone, Kerry. That doesn't include welfare, disability, unemployment, aid to dependent children, housing allowances, and now, of course, free health care. So if your goal in life is to sit in a windowless government office building handing out entitlement checks, you got jobs forever. This Obama is great at creating jobs like that.
My goodness.
And how about the boom in basements, Kerry? With Obama in control.
Cellar kids.
You build cellars, if you build basements, your ship has sailed. It's come in, man, because nothing is more important at this point than having a basement in your home so your adult children who are 30 years old and unemployed have a place to live.
That's just great.
So Barack Obama scored on all of those fronts.
Who would have thought that things could be so good?
Yeah, I mean, they're fantastic. The news media says 31% of all Americans between the ages of 18 and 34 live with their mommy and daddy, and they're telling me everything's okay. I don't think it's okay. So, the basement has now become the new hip place to design, a home, an apartment for a 30-year-old unemployed child. Pharmaceutical companies, too, by the way, Kerry.
Oh, yeah.
30 million Americans dependent on antidepressants. And the more Obama talks from his teleprompter, the more people need to pop an antidepressant. So pharmaceutical companies are thanking the ground they walk on that Barack Obama exists in this world. He's the greatest antidepressant pill salesman in the history of the world.
Hey, that's a great point. And I think after this call, I'm going to go get a script myself, Wayne, because you're just making me so happy.
And some other people outside the United States should be happy, because none of my fans can understand why Obama normalized relations with Cuba. A lot of people are just scratching their head with everything going on in the world. Why was that important? Well, the answer is that Obama is a communist. And communist Cuba was about to completely collapse, thereby proving once and for all that communism doesn't work because it's only 90 miles from our shore and 90 miles off the Florida coast. So Obama couldn't allow that to happen. It would be just a terrible theme or narrative while he's still in office trying to make this a communist country. So Obama saved Cuba by opening up trade with Cuba. As a matter of fact, if you don't believe me that normalizing relations has also opened up trade, the day after he made his announcement, I understand that the biggest hotel corporations in America, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, they all had people on the beach in Cuba plotting out spaces where they could build their luxury resort hotels. So Obama gave an injection of capitalism into the Cuban communist economy that will keep it alive. So, once again, I've always said the corporatists and the communists get along fantastic. The people can starve to death or, like in Venezuela, have no toilet paper. But as long as the corporations are making money and the stock market's at all-time highs, the heads of Marriott and Hilton and Westwood are all very happy. And so now that's going to replicate itself in Cuba, and they're going to save the Cuban economy. But the Cuban people will still be under a communist regime that if you criticize them publicly, they torture you and take you away for the rest of your life. And Obama didn't change any of that. He just saved the economy so he wouldn't have the embarrassment of a communist country failing 90 miles off the Florida shore. So Fidel and Raul Castro should celebrate this New Year's and kiss the ground Obama walks on. He is the savior of communism.
Well, I will say this, Wayne, as far as Cuba goes, we're becoming more and more like Cuba every day. This isn't the same United States as it was in '59 when we implemented the embargo, so probably outlived its usefulness. And I would say a couple million tourists overrunning the island of Cuba will have more effect than the embargo, for sure. So
No, I get all that. Believe me, I'm someone who generally supports free trade. So none of this was like a large, big deal for me. Yeah. But what it is why did he do it? None of my friends could figure out what was the importance now. And it was to save his communist comrades, Fidel and Raul. That's all this was about.
Yeah, but it's going to have the opposite effect, is my point. But leave it to a progressive to screw even that up, right?
Well, we'll see. Yeah,
it will have the opposite effect.
Over time, it will, Kerry. Here's my prediction. Yeah. Over time, yes, I agree with you. But short term, it will keep a communist, tyrant in office a little bit longer. That's the problem. And just enough longer that it won't embarrass Obama to have a total communist collapse, inches off the American shore. That was the point of all this.
Yeah, I know. And they will get toilet paper.
Exactly. Americans always have toilet paper to offer the world.
Yeah, well, we always have a surplus of that. And I'm sure in the White House, they've got even more than they need, right?
Exactly.
Hey, what about our buddy Vladimir Putin? He's not doing too good right now. That's definitely dangerous for the U.S., definitely dangerous for the world. There's nothing worse than a cornered, injured animal with his hand with nukes to make the world a safer place, right?
Well, I included him in my article, not because I think the Russian economy is going gangbusters. It was until the price of oil collapsed, and now it's headed for disaster. But I included the article why Putin should celebrate Obama, because Obama's made him relevant again, made him and Russia important again, on the world stage. I actually had a couple people that emailed me and said, you're wrong. That was the only part we disagree with, because Russia's about to be bankrupted. Well, I understand that. But the point is, that Russia is a joke. They couldn't even build facilities for the Olympics in Sochi when things were going well. Everything was broken when they got there, and people's water didn't work. Their sink didn't work.
It was a joke.
Properly closed. Russia's always been a joke, but Obama's made them a world player on the world stage, a potent, military country again. Of course, we all know they invaded a nothing country and took over a nothing country, but that's not the point. They gambled and they held a gun to America's head, and Obama capitulated and blinked first, and he was able to take over Crimea and some of Ukraine, and basically we look foolish and weak, and Putin looked powerful, and his military actually looked potent and got their swagger back, and Russia now, is basically tweaking us all over the world. On a world stage, they have more importance and more significance to Iran and whether they build a nuclear weapon, and to Syria and to the Arab Spring ring than we do. So Obama put Russia back on the map. He put Russia in the front seat of the bus, and ironically, America's now sitting in the back seat, as it were. So I think Putin should also celebrate Barack Obama.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know what you're saying. It's just the decline of the country, and really sad because you and I grew up, same time, around the same time, and who would have ever thought we would live to see this, right?
Well, who would have ever thought that while all this is going on in the world and all these bad things are happening, you'd have a president who just can't play enough golf, keeps going to Hawaii, and even is willing to kick some military people off the golf course who are about to get married. He actually ruins their wedding by moving them because he has to play golf. That's amazing. It's not an important issue, Kerry. It's not one I want to spend a lot of time with, but it's just symbolic of what kind of egomaniac sociopath is living in the White House. And then, of course, he covers it up by making a phone call to them, so he makes it seem like he's a really nice, caring guy. He ruined their wedding, changed all their plans simply because he wanted to play some golf, like he couldn't go to a different golf course. But, now he's this great guy that made a phone call to them that surprised them, and they actually got the president on the phone. So now he's this wonderful guy. I mean, people believe this garbage. It's amazing.
How do you really feel about him, Wayne?
He's a bad guy. That's how I really feel about him. And I've always felt from the beginning, by the way, I've never claimed I know who it is that sent him. I've only claimed somebody sent this man to ruin the United States of America. And I don't know if it was the Russians, the old Soviet Union coming back at us. I don't know if it's China. I don't know if it's just all the billionaires of the world who hate America and want to have a one-world society where they're in charge, not a particular government or people. I don't know if it's people that just love communism and want to take away our freedom. I don't know if it's Muslims who want to kill Christianity and Judeo-Christian values. But he sure seems to be a guy that is helping all of those people step by incremental step, and certainly not helping the American true blue patriot. I'll tell you that much.
It's just shocking. And, anything that happens now, it almost doesn't surprise you anymore, Wayne. It's just nothing he can do can surprise you, can it?
Nothing surprises me anymore. There isn't anything I would put by him. It's just amazing that it was only weeks ago that the conservative movement won a massive historic landslide. And I predicted it and quoted a coming massive historic landslide. I was right, but I also predicted it probably wouldn't matter because after he lost, he's a sociopath and an egomaniac. And he'd want revenge on the American people that at least he knows deep down, hate him or dislike him, despise him, threw him out of office, try to, totally, completely throw it in his face with a landslide victory, rebuked him. Any word you want to use, deep down, somebody who's a sociopath and an egomaniac can't take that. So he may act as if he didn't lose in a landslide. He may act as if it's all because not enough people showed up to vote. So it really isn't a legitimate landslide. But he knows deep down it was a landslide, and they weren't able to fix this election. And so he's going to take revenge on us over the next 2 years. And he never faces the electorate again. He's not even responsible for what happens in 2016 to the Congress. In other words, his watch is either am I a reelected president, and does my Congress get reelected? Well, that's during the 8 years what mattered. Now nothing matters. He's not responsible for anything that happens in 16 to him or his fellow Democrats. So he's free to be himself, Kerry, which means we're going to get the most radical leftist communist Obama that anyone has ever seen. The gloves are off. He can do whatever he wants. And the perfect example was only, 3 weeks after the landslide, he, came out and said, I'm using an executive order to legalize millions of illegals because Congress won't act. So therefore, I'm going to break the Constitution and just do it myself with no help from Congress. Amazing. Never thought I'd see something like that, but I knew that he's a dangerous man once he loses and he never runs for election again. You
are correct on that score. And hey, tell us where we find you and how we connect with you and find out more.
Sure. My present book is The Murder of the Middle Class. You can find it at Amazon, and you'll read everything that's happening to this country for real. The truth is out, and the lies are ripped to shreds in The Murder of the Middle Class. Makes a great New Year's gift, by the way. Tell yourself the truth. I think that's always a positive. You can't succeed in life without knowing what you're facing, and I think people are scared of hearing the truth. They'd rather go about their lives and, get an ice cream cone at night and watch American Idol and never hear someone like me or you, Kerry, really tell them the negative, sad, stark reality to what's facing them. You got to know if you're going to succeed and if you're going to thrive. And then my website is root4america.com, where you can find out more about my books like The Murder of the Middle Class and The Ultimate Obama Survival Guide. And I will announce on your show that I just signed a new book deal, and it's official now. And the new book deal is my first 100% self-help book, nothing to do with politics or Barack Obama. Let the trumpets begin and the drumbeat begin. And it's called Think and Grow Relentless, named after my favorite book, Think and Grow Rich. And it's really that if you want to be successful in life, it isn't brains that matter. It isn't IQ that matters. It isn't your Harvard degree that matters. The only thing that matters is people who are relentless are the ones who make it to the top and who succeed. They are able to overcome all the no's and all the failures and all the rejections and all the experts who tell them what they believe is true isn't true. You've got to be relentless like a Canadian Mountie who always gets his man. Well, that's what I am. And in life, I've succeeded because every time someone said your dream cannot come true, it's ridiculous, I made it come true and I ignored the experts. I am relentless, and I will teach people how to be relentless in my own way. And I think that's an important book that needs to be on the business scene, the self-help scene, personal development scene. So that will be new in 2015. It should be out this summer. They haven't set a date yet, but I believe it'll be right around mid-July. Think and Grow Relentless.
All right, Wayne, good luck on that book. That's great news, and we'll look forward to it. And thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to you after the first.
Thank you, Kerry. God bless, and Happy New Year to everyone. No matter how bleak I've painted a picture, we'll be okay. This is America, and we always succeed and thrive. We're always number one in the world. We're blessed by God. Happy New Year, and God bless everyone.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.